right, so welcome all of you, and thank you for attending today. I'd say this was one of, I think probably a highlight of my summer last year, doing this event. It was just really cool to see everybody's questions in the chat. But so a real quick introduction. So my name is Darielle, and I have spent, oh my gosh, I think 6 years, 8 years within HR, 6 years within recruitment specifically, and all of it within campus recruiting. So I've hired for software engineers, supply chain, finance, merchandising, so a little bit of everything. And so I'm here today to talk a little bit about, I'm sure it's some of the sessions today, I'm sure it's been like, how do you ace a virtual career fair? Garth just mentioned that recruitment happens all year. And it's so true. Myself as a recruiter, it's like you guys aren't even back on campus, and whether it's looking through Handshake or looking on LinkedIn, we're using those tools so that we can find really great people for our positions. So then today's session is really kind of to help you think about like what's actually going through a recruiter's mind when we're looking at your LinkedIn profile. What are the things that we look for that you want to make sure that you have on there? And I know that's all easier said than done. You're like, Darrell, you're a professional, you know exactly what to put on there. I'm not sure. We'll also give you some ways that you can kind of poke around and see a little bit what other people have out there on LinkedIn that you can actually take and learn from, as well as ways I think it'll make you easier and feel more comfortable connecting with people on LinkedIn as well. All right, so what we're going to walk through today, knowing that everybody is probably at a slightly different spot with familiarity with LinkedIn, we will go over just a few basics about like profile picture, experience, tagline, summary, like what does a recruiter look for with that? What pops out to us? But then I think the piece that gets that's even more exciting is the kind of what we always call course 200. So how do you start to like make those connections? And I'd say even more importantly, how can you use some of the connections to start to get some intel on what should you maybe be putting on your LinkedIn profile? I'd say feel free to post questions. Garth, do you prefer via the chat or Q&A that you want people posting questions?
Whichever they're comfortable is fine with doing the Q&A, but if they can find it on chat, I'll read both.
Perfect. But yeah, don't feel shy about asking questions. We'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. And I also promise you, we will not be on PowerPoint for too long. If you are on your laptop, feel free to pull up your LinkedIn account if you want and follow along the way too, because most of this presentation is actually going to be demonstration. So, all right. So you're probably thinking why, like, I think everybody knows like LinkedIn's an important tool for recruitment, but why do employers tend to focus on LinkedIn? Why should you focus on LinkedIn? There are just millions and millions of people that utilize LinkedIn. Every company has a page. Most universities have a page. So even if you're thinking grad school after you finish your undergraduate degree, LinkedIn could even help you with that to learn more about that institution or university. But it really is the primary one-stop shop for you to put at all points of your career, your skills, experience, and also I think more importantly, what you're passionate about and what you want to go after. This is your place to share that information. And so what I would say a little bit with this presentation today is what I'm talking about with LinkedIn, like we'll keep it LinkedIn specific, but a lot of these concepts you should apply to some of those other platforms that you might be recruiting through this fall. So it could be Handshake, the things that you want to fill in and put on your Handshake account, tools like Way Up. There's a ton of things out there that you can connect with recruiters on. So all these principles are going to be pretty consistent across, but we are going to be focusing on LinkedIn today. So my key takeaway from today that you'll start to hear probably over and over and over again is you want to reverse engineer your LinkedIn profile for the job that you want. So what does that mean exactly? As you're starting to see different internships, full-time opportunities, maybe volunteer opportunities, externships, whatever it looks like, what are those jobs that are most appealing to you and really digging into that job description. I believe there was a session earlier today about acing the virtual career fair. So some of those same principles apply that you probably heard there to here. What are the skills that are required for that position? Because you want to make sure that those skills are coming up on your LinkedIn profile. Because if it's on a job description, myself as a recruiter, I'm using LinkedIn and using different Boolean search terms, using those skills to see what profiles are going to pull up for me when I'm looking, who's going to come up to the top of my search list to review. And if you don't have the skills that are matching that job description, you might not be coming up to the top of my search. So you want to use those job descriptions for those clues of how you can start to stand out to those positions. You might not be able to hit every single company. Obviously, we all look for slightly different things, but what are those common themes, whether it's problem solving, maybe particular programming languages, a certain proficiency level with Excel. You want to make sure that you're capturing that somehow within your LinkedIn profile. And then also looking to what are those experiences that you've had that align to that job that you want to highlight on LinkedIn. Because again, my mind is going to, we're hiring a full-time person. We want them to have maybe we look at, maybe having a little bit of like past internship experience, but we might also want to see that you're active and involved in campus, because at Target, community is a really big deal, not only within our culture, but how we approach our work. So you might realize, like, if I really want to work at Target, I need to make sure that I have my leadership from being a part of a club, maybe kind of demonstrating that you take your career seriously by being in a course that Michigan State offers around career development. But the point is thinking about what's that company's culture that I'm most passionate about, that I can also try to see how do I make that come alive on my LinkedIn profile. And then I promise this will be my last slide for the day before we dive in, because just want to briefly touch on profile picture. So you can see up here, we as recruiters are 14 times, or I think it's people in general, not just recruiters, 14 times more likely to click on your profile if you have a picture. I would say that's the case because as a recruiter, to me, having a profile picture shows that you are active on LinkedIn, that you're engaging within LinkedIn. So I'd say that's one of the things that kind of pops to me when I see that and look for it. My mind immediately goes to, like, if somebody doesn't have a picture, like, oh, like how much do they actually check their LinkedIn account? If I message them, are they going to message me back? And then I'd say piece of advice, keep it simple and professional. We all have different social media platforms that we use for different reasons. And so I hope these pictures of sweet, lovely Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson kind of illustrate this for you. But for a LinkedIn picture, it doesn't need to be expensive. You don't have to have a fancy headshot. It could just be your friend taking a picture of you in front of like a nice brick wall that you see here, or just kind of like a blank wall in like the background of your apartment or house or wherever that is. I'd say there's really kind of not anything necessarily wrong with the Facebook picture, other than we want to know who you are. So avoiding having other people in photos with you on your LinkedIn, or kind of that awkward, like you clearly cut off your friend. So as much as possible, that picture, simple, professional looking, and you'll be good to go. All right, so we're going to switch over to the fun stuff now. So if you haven't already, I would pull up your LinkedIn profile. Okay. So we're going to walk through, I think, a couple other, some initial baseline things that will help you as you're utilizing LinkedIn. So I think one of the kind of cool tricks out there is kind of essentially what information are you putting out there, and how do you signal to a recruiter that you're actually interested in recruiting? You all are likely at different points of your college career, so you might be looking for jobs at different points in time. But this will be really important when you're in your professional career, because if you're happy in a role, you might not want to use this. But what I'm talking about is if you go to your settings and privacy, let's see, so if you go to your settings and privacy, you want to start to look at this job seeking preferences. This is going to help signal a lot of different things to recruiters. So for example, if you're pretty set maybe on maybe for like some part-time work that you're looking to do on campus and you don't have a car. So maybe you want to set some things about commuting preferences. So you get positions that are located really closely to you. You can put more information out there in job application settings about what exactly is it that you're looking for. And LinkedIn will save this information as well too for you. But the piece that I really wanted to show was signal your interest to recruiters at companies that you've created job alerts for. So what this will do is essentially by clicking this on, you're putting out there and what we can see if somebody has. So most recruiters have a LinkedIn recruiter profile. We can do more searches. We can see more things on your profile, potentially different messaging that we get. So if we turn that on, if you turn this on for your profile, I should say, you'll see basically around your profile picture, it'll say open to opportunities, open to networking. So by putting this on, it also will make sure that you rise to the top, particularly the companies that you're following and that you have created job alerts to. By turning this on, you'll actually start to come up to the top of a LinkedIn search for me. So a really cool tool to kind of set yourself apart, but then really just, again, broadcast out there exactly what it is that you are using LinkedIn to do. For myself, for example, I don't have this turned on because I'm enjoying my position at Target. And so I don't want to put that out there. I'm more using it to just connect with people to learn within my career. So that is my first piece of advice. But there's other things in here too that you can just determine about managing your data, how much personal and demographic information you want to have out there. Well, let's get back to the good stuff. All right, so we'll start to walk through a little bit some of the things within your profile that you want, some of those basics that start to pull out. I'd say my profile isn't going to be quite as helpful because I'm not necessarily searching for a position right now. So I have pulled up some profiles of some folks that recently interned with Target. I think just started full-time a couple of weeks back. And so I apologize if they are not Michigan State alumni. I tried my hardest, but again, I wanted to show some really great profiles. And so first things that I want to walk through. So you're obviously gonna have your name. But then what we have up here is basically this header that they'll call a tagline. There's a variety of ways that you can use your tagline to signal to me as a recruiter what it is that you're looking for. This you can start to use to say very clearly, I'm a software engineer at Target, I'm a software engineering intern at Target, or whatever that might be. But you can actually take this a step further. And I think it's particularly important for all of you in college because you might land your internship, say, like at the end of November, but you still want to connect with recruiters throughout the rest of the school year. Maybe you want to put that you're an incoming intern at a certain organization, or maybe you just want to put out there that you're a marketing major that's seeking opportunities within digital advertising. So you can use this to put out there really what it is that you're looking for, and a quick, small recap about who you are. Are you a marketing student? Are you a computer science student? And we'll show one of my other individuals I hired, John, over here, because I think he does this in a really nice way. So he started to call out within his tagline, what are some particular tools that he's actually using? So if he were looking for a position specifically working on using the programming language Kotlin, or I as a recruiter know I need to find a software engineer that knows Java and Kotlin. If I put that into a Boolean search string, John would pop up on here simply by signaling to me in his tagline that this is a skill that he knows. So again, you can think outside of just the student at Michigan State or software engineer at X company. You can start to use this to say, what's your major? And then what types of opportunities are you looking for to signal to me as a recruiter exactly what it is that you're interested in. So we'll stay on John's profile. And again, feel free to put questions in the chat about any of this. So the About section is a nice tool to use to start to signal, I think a little bit more about yourself and what you're looking for in a position. This can really be used, I think, one, as we started to talk about, like, I think anytime with a job search, it's not just looking at those job descriptions that a company has out there and the skills that they're looking for. That's very important. But you also need to take a little bit of time when you're building out your LinkedIn profile to assess for yourself what's really important to you. What's resonating for you and that you want in your career? Is it work-life balance? Is it flexibility in where you can work? Are you passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion? How does that show up in your studies and your work? All of these things tie into the type of company that you're looking for in that culture. And this is where you can start to signal that within your about section. So in his, John's talking about what he's really good at. I think that's another thing you can use this about section for. What are those key things that you know you're really good at? Maybe you're an excellent problem solver, or a really strong collaborator. You can start to put some of that in here. Again, these things will signal to recruiters what it is that you're passionate about and excited for. And I'd say keeping it pretty short and sweet. It's almost thinking about the about section as like an abridged version of your elevator pitch in a way. Some of those key facts. So like, potentially what year are you in school? What are you studying? What are you passionate about and looking for? What are those top skills? Putting that in here is, again, it's your mini elevator pitch within your profile. Because again, I could learn about John that as something that we value at Target, loves mentorship, he's volunteering, all of these things. If I were to pull up his profile in a search, would start to flag to me like, oh, like he might also really enjoy Target's culture and working here, because that seems to align. All right, so then I'd say kind of what we'll connect on a little bit next is the skills and experience section. So one, I will again preface that experience doesn't necessarily mean professional experience. For anybody, I'm not sure who all on the call are like freshmen students, sophomores. So sometimes it can feel daunting to feel like you have enough on your profile. But to me, experience can be volunteering, leadership positions within student groups, being active in a student group, as well as those roles and positions. So again, with your experience on your LinkedIn profile, this doesn't need to be nearly as detailed as your resume. Myself as a recruiter, when I'm looking at this experience section, I'm looking for those kind of like key hits. Maybe it's for software engineering as an example, maybe it's particular programming languages. Maybe I'm trying to get a little bit of a feel of like the scale and scope of like their engineering experience. But it doesn't need to be like an entire every single skill statement or bullet statement from your resume. What are the key accomplishments that you really want to put out here? Because again, you're going to be tailoring your resume, hopefully, to every company you're applying for based off of the skills that they're looking for. LinkedIn should more be an aggregate of that. So if you know that there's 5 different companies you're most interested in, you've looked at their job descriptions, skills are similar, but maybe a tiny bit different, start to look at those themes and then making sure that your bullet points, again, resonate on here. I shared this earlier, but that's how LinkedIn profiles start to pull up for us. Myself as a recruiter, I'm using, whether it's in the search, Boolean search strings, I'm putting in things like, like Java or different variations of titles like software engineer, maybe it's application developer. It's starting because these Boolean search strings will pull up the most relevant profiles based off of my parameters. And it's pulling that information from LinkedIn, from the experience section, from your tagline and your about me section. Let's see. Yeah, so on this profile, they do a really good job of noting skills that they know how to use. We're starting to see like some scale and scope at which their work is being done at. But again, you can start to see here, like they included some things that, well, an undergraduate researcher, sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. They're putting that experience out there that's also showing that they're well-rounded, that they're involved in other things outside of just getting a position necessarily. Let's see. And then super quick, I'd say this is probably what you'll hear from any recruiter with your education section, just making sure it's super easy for us that we know what year you're graduating. I'm not sure within LinkedIn actually at the top of my head if you can put month in there, but for sure putting that year. Another great place where you can put where you're at within your studies, again, is in this tagline. And think like a recruiter. You want to make it as easy as possible for me to see what year you are in school and what those different skills are that you have. All right, a couple other things. Yep, volunteer experiences are called out here. And then the last thing that I will touch on is, I would say myself personally, I think I don't necessarily look too much to skills and endorsements because it's kind of weird. Like I'll sometimes get like endorsement requests from people that I didn't work with all that closely. So it's not a bad thing to have necessarily, but myself as a recruiter, I'm really more interested in your content within your profile up here. This is like the heart of it for me. And then we'll look at Brandon's quick just to kind of compare and contrast a little bit, but you can see same thing. Brandon's including like what he is passionate about, the different skills and where he gained those skills at. Some people even do choose to put their resume on their LinkedIn profile as well too, which you can potentially do. But same thing, you can see like within his profile, he kept his skill statements pretty concise, probably not nearly to the level of detail that he necessarily has on his resume. And then the last thing I want to call out before we get into kind of the next phase of this, or like answering some questions, also put in organizations that you're a part of. Because again, myself as a recruiter, I'm problem solving to figure out like, where can I find like the best people to be working for Target? Maybe it's certain organizations like the Association for Computing Machinery, pretty consistent common group for software engineers. I'm sure there's one for like, there's tons of these organizations. Or if you are really passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, whether you identify with some of these groups or you're a member as an ally, putting that on there, because a lot of companies that'll signal to them, especially after all the, I'd say the social justice movements that been happening throughout the years, companies and organizations are even more attuned to making sure that they're doing right by society. And a lot of companies, some are further along in their diversity journey, like Target, others are stepping into it a little bit newer. But putting these things on here can definitely be beneficial if you're a part of them, because it signals to these employers like you're active and involved in some of these. I could put that in my search string to see like, oh, who do I get up from Michigan State that's a member of the National Society of Black Engineers potentially. Let's see, I can see, I'm going to check the chat to see, Garth, do you have any questions yet?
You know, I think the one question that we probably get the most, and you've kind of lightly addressed it, but let's take it head on. Should your LinkedIn be an exact replication of your resume, or how different should it be?
Yeah, I would say I don't. The first thing I'll say is one, as you're networking with different employers, these are questions that you should feel empowered to ask a recruiter. My caveat I'll say is that each recruiter might give slightly different answers. But how I view your resume is you really should be tailoring your resume as you're applying to different companies to that specific job position. Because at Target, when we look at somebody in supply chain, it might be about like, do you have like problem solving skills? Can you do root cause analysis? Are you able to collaborate and lead a team of cross-functional partners? Another company might not have the piece about, leading cross-functional partners, but for Target, you want to make sure that that's on there. So you should be ensuring that you have those experiences on your resume. And so I say that because you should tailor your resume to each company you apply for. But again, this as LinkedIn should be more of an aggregate, like a high level overview of your resume. We're probably not digging into like the bullet points nearly as much. Again, it's looking at what are those key skills to get on here to pop, when we're doing a Boolean LinkedIn search or something like that to make sure that you show up in my results. So yeah, I'd say it should be a little bit more concise than your resume.
Then Ha has a question he's dropped in the chat. I'll read it for you. He says, getting views on your profile by a recruiter in LinkedIn is a passive process. How can I actively market my profile to a recruiter using LinkedIn?
Let's see. So we will get to a little bit of that in a moment. But to me, I would say a lot of it is ensuring, I think what puts people out there more are some of these small things. Again, like turning on that setting that you're open to recruitment, putting within your tagline up here, what is it exactly that you're looking for within your career? But in a moment, we'll start to get into like how you can start to connect with people a little bit more to hopefully make that process feel a little bit more passive or less passive, excuse me. We don't want to be more passive. Okay, I think we've gotten to the question. So I think the part that I think it's really easy for me to say, like, look at these job descriptions, like put that, then kind of take those learnings and put it on your profile. But there's some pretty easy ways to get inspiration from others to see how did they do that. They obviously got the job at that company. So what did they have on their LinkedIn account? As well as how do you make that process a little less passive? How do you kind of take it head on? How do you make those connections, and how do you make those connections feel authentic? So kind of the next step that is helpful to take within LinkedIn is doing some searches on your own. So there's a couple ways that you want to start to think about this. Again, reverse engineering. If I want a job at X company, or I want X type of job, how do I learn about that job, and how do I get connected to people at that organization that are doing the job that I want? So there's a few ways that you want to start to think about this. One, are there ways you can make connections through a previous employer? Can you search that company to see who's working there? Or can you search through your alma mater? So that's what we're going to walk through a little bit today. How do you start to see some really good profiles on LinkedIn and lead you to some of those connections? All right, so it's just as simple as like, hey, like, let me see, like, what do other Michigan State students that were studying the same thing that I am studying, or now at a company, I want to start to connect with them. I want to look at their LinkedIn profile and see what they have on there. I'd say this is also helpful. You can do any of these searches too, to do that research. Like if you know you're most passionate about a certain company, you can learn a lot about those organizations through their LinkedIn pages. But what you can start to do is you want to connect with alumni. So you simply click on that tab, and then you can, LinkedIn already starts to provide you some really easy ways to start to connect to people. So for example, say you are looking to move after graduation, you want to live in the greater New York City area, and you're interested in companies in the greater New York City area. You click on this and then start to look down here. You can start to see all these different folks that are tied to, because again, you can set your location preferences on LinkedIn. All of these folks are tied in some way to the New York area. And then you can also narrow it down further, because you're going to get 8,000 people that you need to be like kind of looking through their profile. Maybe they're not in the same field as you. So now we can start to see and narrow down. I did maybe a field, maybe this will come up under their major. You could also do a job title as well. So like a supply chain analyst, for example. So now we've narrowed it down to 585 individuals. You can also filter by, I believe this will pull their year that they graduated from the institution. But now you can start to see like, oh, I'm interested in sourcing. So maybe you'd want to connect with Emily to learn about that. Or you could click on to Emily's profile to start to see, how does she lay out her LinkedIn account? Some of these folks will be, again, You can see a really wide variety of levels that they are within their career. So we'll narrow it down a little bit more. Ooh, even better, so 150. So for example, and you won't necessarily get everybody's information, but recent graduate, you're like, I too want to be an analyst at JP Morgan. Anjali, she recently graduated. This is somebody that you could then, again, how do you start to make that recruitment process feel a little bit passive or less passive? You could reach out and make that connection to her, saying, I too am a Michigan State alumni. I'm really interested in working at JP Morgan. I'd love, would you be interested in sharing a little bit more with me about your experience? How did you land the job? What were the things that you did that felt like helped you get that position? Companies are going to have referral programs too, that are typically tied to bonuses. So then she's also incentivized too, if you have a great conversation, to make that connection. While we as recruiters are using LinkedIn to do searches and find people passively who maybe aren't looking for positions, most people are getting their positions during campus recruiting by whether it's attending the networking events and making those connections, and then following up on those as well too, kind of building those bridges, because the more people that are involved in a recruitment process that had a good interaction and conversation with you, the more that you're going to start to get on the radar of those hiring managers and those recruiters as well. They're starting to narrow down and actually select who's going to be interviewing. Let's see, we'll just open up her profile super quick. Because again, maybe, yeah, if you wanted to be an analyst at JP Morgan, what did she put on her LinkedIn account? Uh-oh. Shoot. Fingers crossed. Oh, not sure what happened there. See, I know a lot about LinkedIn, but I'm not a pure expert, but you could click on her account and take a peek. I'd say the other thing that I like to call out here is by searching by something like an alma mater that you have your connection with, you have this Michigan State connection with so many people on LinkedIn, take advantage of that. Everybody loves to connect and talk to somebody from their university. So just putting in that message when you reach out, say you want to connect with them. Don't just send the generic connect message that goes with it. Put that note in. It's like, hi, I am also Michigan State alumni. I'm interested in the career, and would you be interested in connecting? And let me ask some questions about your position. People love connecting with individuals from their alma mater that have those ties and connections. It will also make this process, which can feel really intimidating, feel more personal, feel more authentic to you, because you have something in common with that person right off the bat that you can message them about. All right, so that's looking at alma mater. Let's say you have a particular company that you're super interested in. I feel like I'd be a bad HR representative if I didn't do Target, so bear with me. We can also we'll look at another company too if people are interested. So again, these pages will start to put just a ton of information out there to learn about that company too. It'll take you to their corporate website. You can learn about the position. They'll post videos. You can see trending content. So again, a great way to prep for a networking session with somebody. But what we're most interested in is people. So very similar. The only difference that you'll see is with this university was called alumni. For a company, it'll be called people. And then you can use the same type of principles. So one, it's going to, again, narrow things down for you. As well as you can start to, again, filter by different colleges and universities. But say you want to be inventory analyst at Target, and that's the job that you're most interested in, you want to learn more about. Ooh, and you want it to be an even more personalized connection. So you can then filter down by just Michigan State. So then you're going to get all these alumni that you can make that connection to. And let's see, maybe this time it'll let me click on their, oh, that's so weird. Sorry about that, everybody. It's not taking me to people's profiles. But again, you could click on Amanda's profile and start to look at how did she put her experiences on her resume? I want to be an inventory analyst at Target. How she laid this content out, it must have been somewhat appealing. Like she got that position. I think it can also give you inspiration too for some positions that and experiences that maybe you're lacking in your repertoire. Maybe you're like, what are some events or things that maybe they were involved in, groups I could join? And there's so much information out there on LinkedIn that you can use. But again, I feel like this function where you can really start to search by the people that are in that position to build that connection, to ask questions to, is just going to give you that much more information to help you in that recruiting process. But again, the whole purpose of this is really thinking, going to the source to say, I want X job, and then using whether it's searching this way, looking at job descriptions to make sure that you are highlighting those experiences and skills that you have on your LinkedIn account so they come up for searches when I'm looking for potential hires. And I think that's the main part of what I wanted to walk through. So definitely open to any questions could be related to LinkedIn specifically. It doesn't just have to be about what we talked about today. If people have questions about, kind of what's kosher to post on LinkedIn or whatever that might be, happy to answer questions that people might have.